Hello everyone, my name is Nnenna. Like we all know, August is our mentoring month, and Olivier had asked me to speak about a woman who had mentored me, especially in my faith walk, and to share a few things. So I thought about it. I've had a couple of women who have influenced me, who have mentored me in different aspects of my life, but one in particular stands out. During a particular season, just because of the significance of that season and how tough it was for me. And that woman happens to be my mom. So this was in March 2018. So we had lived in the Midlands, down in the middle of England, and had to move up, had just moved up north to the north of England because of my husband's job. And by this time I was on maternity leave. I just had my last son, and we moved up, and I was 8 months into maternity leave. Here in England, maternity leave runs for 9 months. It's paid for 9 months, and then you can stay up to 1 year, and the rest of the 3 months are unpaid. So you can imagine I was 8 months into my maternity leave and about to finish the 9 months, and then I was in this new area. I was beginning to search for a job so that I could resign my job where we had moved up from, because there wasn't any way I was going to be able to do the commute. It's so far away. So I searched for jobs. There was nothing to find. I reached out to the HR. I wrote letters. I introduced myself. I called, but there was nothing to find. There were no job opportunities for a pediatric doctor. It's a really small locality, and there's just one district general hospital that serves the area, so it was understandable that nothing was opening up. And I had to resign my job, and you can imagine I became anxious. I became very unsettled, and really was really desperate to get back to work. I had 3 children. My first was 6, my middle child was 2 plus, and then my last was just 8 months plus. And I was really busy when it came to looking after my kids. And don't forget, we were in a new area, a new locality, didn't know anybody, didn't know neighbors, we hadn't had a church, but all my mind was made up on was to move to work. And don't get me wrong, it's not like we shouldn't work. It was just that I was so fixated on that thought, because by the time I had my 3rd child, I wasn't keen on being pregnant, and found myself pregnant. And so you see, everything was frustrating, because at this point I wanted to move my career forward. So my mom used to call and check in on us. How are we doing? How are we settling in? And we'll just talk about the place. We liked the area and all that. But I had this story on my lips. I haven't found a job. And she'll listen, she'll encourage me, and she'll drop the phone. And then there was this particular day she called me asking how things were, and I began to lament that I hadn't found a job. There was nothing forthcoming. I was just at home, and I was just expressing my frustration. And she listened throughout the course of the conversation. And when it all was over, when I had finished saying my own part, she said that I should be calm. Those were her words. Those were her 2 words. Then I'll be calm. And she started reminding me, she said that, she asked me another question. She was like, if you go back to work now, have you sorted out childcare? What are you going to do with these 3 children? That was not something I had considered. In my whole mind, I wanted to go to work. I didn't know how childcare was going to happen, but I just knew that somehow I felt like I'll figure something out. So she just told me, be calm. And she said, why don't you just enjoy this season that you're in? I know it's hard. I know it's difficult. You want to go back to work. That is understandable. But why don't you just try and enjoy this season? Then she spoke in our language, Igbo. She said that I should remember that these children are the ones that I was praying for some years ago, when I had challenges with having my babies, and that, I should just enjoy them, just thank God for them and just enjoy them. I shouldn't see them as an inconvenience to my plans. And so that day I was explaining to her that she didn't understand our regulatory body wanted us to be back to work and all that. She just kept on saying, Nnenna, enjoy the season you're in. And then she went back and told me the story of how at times in her professional life she had to step back a couple of times because my dad was usually busy, and how she had to give up some things just to be able to give us stability in the family, and told me how she had to hold on to her profession loosely so as to hold the family firmly. And those words, even though at that time I didn't appreciate them, as days went by, they began to echo back in my head. I would just hear her voice coming right back to me. And what that did for me without my mom knowing was a shift inside. Sometimes some moms may put you under pressure, say, go and work, you need to work, but not her. And she wasn't underplaying the fact that, yeah, it's good to improve myself professionally and career-wise, but she was helping me reset my perspective so that I could appreciate the season I was in and not to compare myself with anybody. And what that did was she told me something else. She said, God knows where you are. She said, God knows where you are. Nnenna, don't forget that God knows where you are. And those words began to, words are powerful. They began to, each time I began to feel the frustration rise, I'll remember what my mom had said, God knows where you are. And it just helped me mellow down. I truly began to calm down. And once that internal shift had happened, I began to pray about it with less complaining, and I just began to trust God for what he was doing, and became more mindful that God knew my season, the season I was in. It turned out that period, I didn't get that job, the job I wanted, up until September of 2019. So if I wanted to be frustrated, you can imagine how long the frustration would have lasted for. But what it did was I was able to be present with my kids. I was able to be present as a wife, present with my children. I would take them for playgroup sessions. I will play. It was during that period I began to read the Bible more intentionally with them. You will see me, I will back them, doing chores, we'll be laughing, gisting, singing and learning. I just taught them lots of gospel songs. My kids really loved during that period, learned so many songs. And it became a very fruitful season just because somebody else, a mentor, an older, wiser, faith-filled woman, spoke to me, guided me by virtue of her own experience and her work with the Lord, and helped redirect the focus of my heart. So that was the gift of that season. That was the gift of a mentor to me. And it doesn't have to be your mom, but it can be just a woman who has walked the journey, especially the added value of the fact that the person knows the Lord, the person has the experience, the person is wise and is leading you, guiding you, with faith-filled words. So that's my story in brief. Hopefully this has helped you. Okay, bye.